Hey, what's up YouTube? This is the Mermail Master coming at you guys again from the Team Time Riders YouTube channel, and I'm back today with my updated Spellbook deck profile. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking me for this video. It's been a long time coming, and I will just say this, that this is the deck that I actually took to locals this past Thursday, and I managed to come in third place with the deck. I went 3-1 at the tournament. Well, technically, it's 3-1, 2-1-1. I faced against 4 different decks. So round 1, I faced against one against ABC. Then round 2, I lost to Red Eyes, believe it or not. Our very own Timaeus, the God Monarch, ended up taking the deck 6-0 in the tournament and winning out and winning an awesome playmat. So please feel free to check that out, guys. We got a deck profile coming from him very soon. It's a fantastic deck, and it's unlike any Red Eyes deck out there. So yeah, round 3, I face against Norp and his Cosmos. Very tough match for sure, but I managed to win that. And then in round 4, I faced against True Draco. And I won game 1 against True Draco, actually due to some kind of like ruling dispute, which, I don't hold that against my opponent at all, but it had to do with Spellbook of Life being an equip card, and then he ended up targeting my blue boy, thinking that Life was equipped to the card, and then I was able to special summon back a High Priestess of Prophecy and pop his Masterpiece for game. But, I just wanted to put that out there that it might have been on a technicality. And so I just want you guys to know as well that, I'm guessing like if my opponent had a better knowledge of the way that Spellbook of Life had worked, like chances are that he might have been able to co-opt that play before I was able to make it. But nevertheless, I ended up offering to tie him in the middle of game 2. Just simply because it was getting extremely late and the shop owner really wanted to go home. But nevertheless, this is the deck that I played with. It's not completely complete to like the level that I'm trying to get it. It's not completely updated, and this was the very first event that I took it. I finally have all 3 of my Spellbook of Knowledge, thanks in very large part to both Cyframe NG and to Timaeus the God Monarch. Who helped to hook me up with all of the cards that I needed for this updated build. And so I'm very indebted to them, and, shout outs to them, both great members of Team Time Riders. And they put out a lot of great content on the channel. But yeah, so this deck is, as I mentioned, not fully complete yet. And it's very much like a test build as I try and figure out what's going to work in the format. And if there's one thing that I've discovered, I guess, about Spellbook of Knowledge, it's that the card is it's a card that basically changes the fundamental way in which spellbooks are run. So I'll get a little bit more into that as we get this profile started. But let's get going, guys. I think I've talked enough, so we'll get into the profile. If you watch my last video, you'll know most of what the cards do, so I'm mostly going to run through them and explain a little tiny bit of them, but I don't want this profile to drag on too long. So we're starting things off with the main man here, 3 Blue Boy. Blue Boy is the main monster playmaker of the deck, great to have on the field for both Master and Fate, as well as, just a good spellcaster all around. One of the beneficial things about him is that he can search any spellbook card in your entire deck. So that's very good. The next card, of course, we're running 3 Temperance of Prophecy. Very fantastic card. Whenever you activate a spellbook spell card, you contribute this card from the field and special summon a level 5 or higher spellcaster type monster from your deck. And that's anything. We usually have our 2 main targets, Priestess and World. However, you can grab anything with this card. And I love the Temperance build, and I don't see myself stopping to play it anytime soon. Next, we got 2 Kaiku. I'm still trying to decide whether or not I want to take Kaiku out of the deck or I just want to keep Kaiku in, but it's a really good card. It actually ended up winning me one of my Cosmo games, primarily because of its ability to restrict banishment from the graveyard. Though you can still banish from the field and from your hand, for instance, so he did manage to get me on that. But Kaiku's awesome for just like banishing things from your opponent's graveyard and ensuring that they can't use it again. But I gotta see like how I feel about this card in the meta coming up to decide whether or not I want to keep it. Next, we got 2 High Priestess. High Priestess really put in work this past Thursday. Fantastic, fantastic card. Allows you to pop your opponent's. You banish a spellbook spell card from your graveyard and pop any card on your opponent's side of the field. This actually came in super big handy, as I mentioned, against the True Draco player. I outed both of his masterpieces. In game 1, I outed his first one when he tributed the Trap and the Dynamite for this card here. For his masterpiece, I ended up outing it with Fate, and then in game 2, when he tributed his spell and a trap, High Priestess really put in work and was able to get that card off the field. So, great card. And then the final card we have for the Prophecy monsters here is World. And World, I can't say enough about this card. It's got a great destruction effect, blowing up everything else on the field but itself. But the real reason that I like World is because when you get it to the field, you can grab any 2 spellbook spell cards from your graveyard back to your hand. And this deck has 0 graveyard recursion whatsoever when it comes to spellbooks, like graveyard to hand recursion. And Tower is kind of very slow now. Unfortunately, it doesn't serve like the same kind of grindy purpose as it did in previous spellbook builds. But with Tower not being able to ramp up fast enough to, sort of match you up against other decks, World being able to fetch spellbooks from your graveyard back to your hand is probably one of the main reasons that you should run this card. It's absolutely, in my opinion, kind of like a necessary evil to have in here. That yes, you can draw it, but on the same time, if you get it off and can get some of those spellbooks back to your hand and make more plays, it's beneficial. Another thing I will mention as well is that unfortunately, there's been a lot of changes with knowledge in the deck. So, more changes can be made with World. And then the final card we're running here is a single copy of Maxi for the draw, until he gets banned, of course. But that is it for the monsters. And now moving on to the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Spellbook of Secrets, searches any spellbook card. That includes spellbooks as well as your Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. Very great, a spellbook engraved for Fate as well. And now, the main card of the deck, the main new thing here we've got, shout out to the boys once again, is that triplicate copies of Spellbook of Knowledge. Spellbook of Knowledge is definitely a necessary, kind of evil in the deck. And it's a card that you absolutely have to run. But I will mention as well that Spellbook of Knowledge, it doesn't seem like it does much because it's tributing a spellcaster or sending a spellbook from your hand or field to the graveyard in order to draw 2 cards. So you wouldn't really think that there's that much change that has to go on the deck. But, in exchange for ramping things up, you suddenly have the ability to make first turn Fate. It's an extra card for your Crescent plays. It can even get rid of dead Crescents in your hand in order to be able to draw you some more cards. And the amount of time that it pushes things through your deck means that you're going through spellbooks at a very heavy rate. And Tower will allow you to to add a spellbook from your graveyard back into your deck once per turn to draw an extra card. But even that card is kind of slowing down the deck. Right now spellbooks have so many ways to get things into the grave and consistently, have enough spellbooks for Fate, but not being able to, tribute certain spellcasters from your hand kind of hurts this in a way that is not really, that much beneficial. So I'm very split on Spellbook of Fate, or on Spellbook of Knowledge, because on one hand, it ramps through the deck very fast and allows you to make a lot of different plays. But on the other hand, you have to kind of, right now, I'm going to have to change the deck in order to build around Knowledge, because Knowledge, it's an absolutely necessary card in the deck in the same way that Neptibus was. But, it changes the fundamental way that spellbooks are played. And I definitely think there has to be some other way to help make the deck more aggro and to push out much bigger plays than the deck was capable of at first. So I'm still doing experimentation on that. Been keeping up with the with the Spellbook Divine chapter group. Shout outs once again to Raiden and Dark Games for setting that up. Man, like I'm part of the group. I'm looking to constantly contribute things there. It's a fantastic place. And if you guys don't know about the Facebook group, feel free to go check it out. And Raiden does a really good job at upkeeping the group, and it's an awesome place to share spellbook stuff. So that's Spellbook of Knowledge. Next, we're going to move on to Spellbook of Fate. I only run 2 copies of this. You only really need 2 because of the ability to recycle things back. But Spellbook of Fate is actually very, very awesome for a number of different reasons. And I ended up using all 3 of its effects, believe it or not, over the weekend. Against my Cosmo opponent, I was able to bounce back his set trap card during his end phase and then OTK for game the next turn. And then I used the banish effect several times. And then one time I also used his ability to banish 2 spellbooks to flip a spell card face down, or to flip my blue boy back into defense position so I could get another search off of his effect. So very, very good card. The next card we have is 2 Crescents. I'm thinking about bumping this number up to 3 just to have more spellbook names as well. Very, very good card. But you can't activate it when there's no spellbooks in your graveyard. But having Knowledge in here allows you to basically run 3 of these. It's just an extra name and an extra way to search things out of your deck. So very, very awesome card in a lot of different ways, and useful now on turns that are not even turn 1. Now we have 2 copies of Spellbook Tower. I'm actually thinking about cutting this down to 1. There were a lot of times in the tournament that I ended up drawing into multiples of this card, and in order to load up my graveyard, I'd have to, activate this card on a different field, and that was kind of unfortunate. But I really don't know how I feel about it, because yes, you contribute it for knowledge, and it's an absolutely necessary thing to be able to draw extra cards per turn, but it's not fast enough anymore. And that's kind of sad because, in its heyday, Towers was one of the grindiest cards and allowed spellbook players to, get advantage. But now, with the amount of advantage, like the amount of pure advantage that you gain off of knowledge, Towers is kind of becoming less viable, and in many ways can kind of be dead and bricky in the same way that Star Hall is, to not get you benefits right away. Like when you basically search Towers, you're not going to +2 it to the next turn. So in a sense, it's a -1, but somehow you have to get Towers out onto the field. Otherwise, there's going to be some kind of an issue. So it is kind of a shame that you can't really use Towers to the kind of level that it should be used to. So some kind of look into the ratios, I think, has to be done. I want to cut it down to 1, but I really want to see the card as well, and I don't want to have to search it. Really, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with Towers in the future. Any suggestions that you guys have, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to take them. Next card we got is Masters. Basically copies any normal spellbook spell card in the graveyard by revealing 1 in hand and controlling a spellcaster type monster. Master has been a main playmaker in this deck for a very, very long time, and a lot of players are also bumping Master up to 3 because now you have the ability to discard it off of the Spellbook of Knowledge. So all of a sudden, if you have multiple Masters in your hand, they're not really that dead. And sometimes, you need to activate a specific play. So I think Masters is a card that might actually see more play and at greater numbers in the Spellbook deck than, versus Towers, which might go down. So, I'm still playing with the ratios here. I'm still trying to figure it out. But very, very good card, and definitely I could see it going up in numbers. Definitely not down. Next, we got 2 Spellbook of Wisdom. Spellbook of Wisdom came in big handy for me over the weekend as well. It won me my ABC duel by just activating it in response to a Lost Wind and to a Bottomless Trap hole 2 games in a row in order to clinch the win. Very, very good card. Don't know whether or not I want to put it to 1. Um, you know, a lot of the spell books in here are staying at 2 because of the fact that we don't really have any way to recycle spell books back into the deck outside of Tower from the graveyard. And if you go through a knowledge and you don't have a Tower on the field, which is like, a situation that I found myself in several times, is just trying to really manage my resources or figure out this kind of like new way that knowledge is done. I found myself actually needing like my second wisdoms and my second masters and sometimes even a third fate or whatever. But this is definitely another card that I'd like to consider. And then for this spellbook card, we have 2 copies of Spellbook of Eternity. Still a great number of 2. Basically fetch any spellbook card, banish back into your hand. Very self-explanatory. And for the final one of spellbooks, we have 1 copy of Spellbook of Power. Yes, it's still not ultimate rare. Still plan to get an ultimate rare when I can. It's a very, very expensive card, unfortunately. But Power's really great for just like beating through stuff. There does need to be like a little bit more change in the deck in order to function with it, but it's a good card nonetheless. Spellbook of Life. This was actually very, very useful. I used this several times to bring back World from my graveyard and blow up the field or just attack for game with this. I think World came out by Life in every single match that I had in the tournament. So like really, really like Life put in work, and 1 is a perfect number for Life. I never really found myself needing it any more than that. So very good card. The final 2 spell cards are still 2 copies of Twin Twisters. Again, this is coming very useful. Actually, in my Red Eyes match, though, I managed to pop both of his face-down cards, which were all those Red Eyes Reborn cards with my Twin Twisters, and he managed to be able to chain them to get 3 separate monsters to the field, which kind of sucked, but whatever, there's not really anything you can do about that. Still a very, very good card and helps you get dead spellbooks or even dead worlds out of your hand, which, dumping that stuff to the graveyard and then reviving it is huge. So now, moving on to the trap cards. And the trap cards is where a lot of changes are going to take place, and I'll show you exactly like where some of the changes are. Based on my past build, you'll notice that, the lose 1 turns are no longer present, but I'm still trying to figure out where to put them. So, the card that we have here is 2 Storming Mirror Forces. Very, very good card. Non-targeting, non-destruction removal. Very great. Came in handy. And then we have still the 2 copies of Ultimate Providence. I'm planning on taking these out for strikes, either strikes or Drowning Mirror Forces, because in reality, like, Fate is not really the big power play that it once was, and, oftentimes tributing off your blue boy can conflict with Fate, but at the same time it sets you up to be able to go for Drowning Mirror Force, which, all in all, is a more, if you think about it, a more permanent kind of removal in many ways, especially against big fields, than Fate is. Even though Fate put in so much work during the tournament, banishing just pretty much everything. Still, like, while I really, really want to have Strike in the deck, Ultimate Providence came in such handy outing spells and traps that my opponent activated. And if there was some kind of replacement that I could use that had the kind of coverage that Ultimate Providence does, I definitely would consider that. But, as of now, I think it's a fantastic card and definitely something worth running. So that's that. And then the final 2 cards I have are 1 copy of Torrential Tribute, which actually did win me a game. And I quote, one of my opponents said, who the heck still runs this card? But very, very good. Not a lot of things right now have too much targeting protection or whatever. And if your opponent's got, tribute something out and they don't have any, protection against that kind of destruction, like, this is a fantastic disruption card against your opponent. And then the final card is Solemn Warning, self-explanatory. Pay 2,000, negate a summon or a card that would summon. So guys, that was my Spellbook deck profile that I took to this past Thursday's event and ended up tying for 3rd place. I really, really enjoyed playing the deck, and it really turned up. as I mentioned, I'm still not totally used to the addition of knowledge in the deck, and it really changes the way that spell books are played. And now that I have all my copies, it's going to be a crazy journey in trying to figure out some way to utilize knowledge in the best way that I can. But let me just tell you guys, it was fantastic being able to play this event. The team really, really turned up. Tamias ended up winning the whole event and taking home an awesome playmat, which hopefully you guys will be able to see in future deck profiles that he does. It's a two-player playmat with all of the link zones in it. But yeah, this is a deck profile that I was really happy to do for you guys. Stay tuned as well, because Team Time Rider's Cosmic King is going to be doing his updated Spellbook deck profile as well, and we can't wait to show you guys that profile, because it is also really, really bringing the heat for the Spellbooks. So guys, once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for supporting. If you like the video, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and we're looking forward to catch you guys next time. This has been the Mermail Master with the Team Time Riders YouTube channel, and I'm signing out. Catch you guys next time. Peace.